Just seeing if this is working a sec, guys. Oh, thought my computer froze. You're on YouTube as well. Good. I forgot to change the description on Patreon, but oh well. Not what I wanted to do. Okay. There we are. Okay. So it's been a while, huh? Hope we're all doing good, guys. Hope we're all having a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, night, wherever we are. No real plan for this one, I don't think. Where's VOTV been? Well, he's right here. Partly he's right here. But it's been a long time, hasn't it? It's been a long time, really. So right now we should hopefully be not echoing. Hopefully. We should hopefully not be echoing. Anybody that happens to be in any chats right now, if they can let me know if anything is echoing. I've had to re-download, completely format and get rid of OBS because it was playing up massively. So I've lost all of my settings. You won't see any fancy layouts or really anything that I wanted to do as part of the previous streams in this one. But like I said, I thought that we just jump on a bit quick, shoot the shit, I'd see if I could just see if I can still do it, you know, see whoever was still out there, hopefully, and just reach back out, let people know what's really been going on. Because if you look on my YouTube as an example, up until recently, my last upload before that was a good couple months ago. And in fact, oh, that's not something I wanted to do. See, that's what I mean. I've lost all my old layouts, which is not ideal in the slightest, but we'll make do with what we've got, essentially. In fact, I can crop that one down just slightly. There we are. Boo-doo-doo-doo-doo. So I'll give it a couple of minutes just in case anybody is coming in. Anybody who wants to come in might be running just a little bit late, whilst I also set up this. Oh, what the hell's this? No, that isn't the way it normally works, is it? I got to figure out how OBS works again. Right, is it? Ah, this was it. Yes. This was it. Here we go. There we are. Much better. Much, much better. So I'll crop this down just a little bit. So hopefully it will fit somewhere here. There we are. My ragtag throwing together of a display window. In fact, just make this a little bit more even. There we are. Much better. Much, much better. So obviously the last thing that we sort of done here, if I go over here, there we go, was to do the Henry Novak vigil in Southampton. Up until recently, that was the last video uploaded, and really there's been no explanation as to why. Now, I hope that the most recent upload, if you have seen it, will at least make it aware or make it known that it's not nothing that I have been doing, but there have been some reasons as to why I have been so absent, at least from online posting, you know, political journalism efforts, whatever you really want to call them, right? So, how many we got in at the moment? Not many, nothing in the chat. Can you guys just let me know if I'm echoing? I shouldn't be. I don't think I am. Not in my preview, I'm echoing anyway. Mr. Dalton, thank you ever so much. It is indeed a lovely hoodie. It is a mighty fine hoodie. What was the phrase that is often used? It's very fine hoodie. Yeah, it's very, very fine hoodie. Some may say like the best hoodie, you know. But essentially, guys, as I streamed to, I think, all of about 6 of you, managed to get the multi-stream on Patreon working as well. So anybody whom is in the Patreon community can also just tune in. You don't need to be a paid member to tune into that either, by the way. So essentially, as the thumbnail of this stream will also tell you or imply, where have I been? Well, I have been around. I have been here. I have been trying to stay as active as possible. But the long and short of it is, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, or whoever the hell it is may be watching this stream, this video, is I've just been extremely fucking busy with work, essentially. So back when I was doing political commentary a lot more than I am now, obviously this was probably months and months and months and months ago, had a fair bit more time on my hands because my work situation at that time was not great. Was not great, to say the least. Would have been a hell of a lot worse for me if I did not have good people around me to support me. Because let's just say I wasn't exactly doing a great job of doing it myself. And I remember just sending a message, essentially in desperation, to someone, basically asking if they could help me out with work arrangements. So my work arrangements were not doing so good. And a little while went by. Nothing came of it at that moment, but eventually the call came in. It's a job there if you want it. And it's been jobs are good on ever since, right? I did keep my other job going for a little while. So for a while, I was working 2 jobs at various split hours that were extremely awkward, which if you happen to know people whom I talk with on a regular basis, they'll be the first to tell you how awkward these hours were between working the main job, which I was getting to grips with and was working through the day, and then a secondary job, which would basically fill in the hours around that. So it was not uncommon at this point in time for days to be extremely long. You're talking, I was leaving my house sometimes at like 20 past 6 in the morning, not seeing it, then again, literally being out all day, you know, until 7, 8, sometimes 9 o'clock, even later at night, sometimes. Because the commutes between these jobs would be very long as well. So it just made it extremely unworkable, but it was the arrangement that I had for these months. Eventually it got to the point where I could let the other job go, which I had to do because it wouldn't be uncommon for me to essentially sleep my way through the entire weekend. You know, I would just be an absolute carcass on the weekend. And again, if you talk to people who I see on a regular basis, they'll tell you how exhausted I was over this period. So luckily then I was able to sort of let that go. It's freed up my schedule a lot more, means I have a little bit more terms of resources to be able to begin devoting to this. But all the while, whilst all that was going on, I have still been working on things. Number one of which is obviously the video that came out recently, which I titled rather deliberately, just checking my phone at the moment, I'll actually put it on Do Not Disturb. I titled I Gymru Newydd, the New Wales. Somebody that reached out to me to essentially just give an every person's take on what they see happening in their community, which in this instance, or in that instance, is the nation's capital. Which you can see that was posted up at the start of this week. There's been other things going on as well. I'm not really at liberty to talk about at the moment. Chief Moody, how are we doing? Good to see you, my friend. But the long and short of it is, ladies and gentlemen, one of the main reasons why I have not been around all that much is that, like anybody else, I can only be in one place at any given time. And pretty much all of my time has been taken up with just trying to make ends meet, keep wolves away from the door, and actually start being a little bit more self-sufficient with the opportunity that was given to me by somebody whom, in a moment where they could have easily forgotten about me, they could have easily just not done anything to help out, put my name forward at a time because they remembered when I'd reached out to them before. I lost my train of thought there for a moment because I was going to say something, but I'm very happy to say, or very fortunate to have this person now, in my opinion, as a good friend of mine. I don't know where I'd be without this person, and without this person in that moment putting my name forward and allowing me now to just start literally standing on my own 2 feet. That's how serious it's been. That's how serious it's been. The other slightly, the other main reason, I should say, less, I'd say, less magnitude, whatever word you want to use, is that, and people who've been working with me on some of these things as well will tell you, that with the updates to software, with how more technologically advanced the world is getting by the day, the old tech that I have isn't quite what it used to be. The old tech that I have isn't quite what it used to be. And as a result, videos and work is just taking longer to churn out, essentially. So that one video, which we might play in a moment, that might be the main sort of focal point of this stream. We might just go over that main video because I was hoping that it would do a lot better than it was, but because I've been away for so long, it seems that the algorithms really don't like me right now. Not that they ever really liked me in the first place, but that video took extremely long, and it obviously to make sure the person was kept anonymous, right? Mainly the blur filters, the masks, all of those things, right, that go into making that video and ensuring security for that person. It adds a lot in terms of processing. Another video where that was quite heavily a factor in how soon I was able to get that video out was the Wrexham video, with how many of those pixel masks I had to put in that video also, and how intensive it can be. We're talking these processes, at least with the software, the methods that I have at my disposal at this present moment in time, was literally adding this frame by frame, less than 1 frame per second at certain points. And obviously some entire sections of this were going to be like several minutes long, and it adds massive times to the export times as well. So I'm not the most technically literate. I'm not sure if there's any ways I can get around this at this present moment in time. But one of the things I'm looking to hopefully do in the future now that I have a better base, from actually being able to work for a living, essentially, is to hopefully start upgrading some of the hardware going forward. But essentially, the mix of the videos or the content, the work that we've been doing being extremely intensive, extremely important, and extremely technically demanding with the current methods that I have, adding a lot onto the time, and then also in some instances literally having no time in some instances to do anything. Many times over the last couple of months is literally been from bed to work to work to bed, essentially. Has just meant that I haven't been able to be around, and I apologize for that. I apologize for that because I really do enjoy it. You know, I think it's quite fruitful work. You know, a lot of the things that we've done and are doing, and it's always good to see the feedback, the positive comments or stuff like that. And it's enjoyable to come on here and shoot the shit with you guys as well. But it's just been something that, you know, sometimes life just gets in the way. It's a hard knock life, as one of my good friends will say. But yeah, that's essentially the long and short of it. That's where I've been. Essentially, if work is like this cave, you know, I've just been like massively in that cave, you know, Gollum maxing, if you will. That's where I've been for like months and months and months. I thank everybody who has either kept their subscription on YouTube, on Rumble. One thing that was quite shocking to me was that the subscriptions from when I last saw them on YouTube versus when I came back for the first time recently had increased substantially, which I was not expecting. I was expecting to come back to, you know, completely, you know, dead YouTube channel. Everything had completely gone. But no, there would be the odd comment that I would see, or people saying, you know, it's been so long since we've heard from you and stuff like that. I was like, I know. But I was hoping I was going to come back with something strong, something good. And that's what I was hoping that video would be. In my opinion, it's one of the best ones that we've ever done. Some of the most important work that we've been doing, in my opinion. Because one thing you see that's been really effective in allowing a lot of this to be pushed forward, a lot of the political initiatives we've seen pushing forward, a lot of the outright ethnic and demographic replacement of Britain that people are seeing more and more every day. It's going to, you know, if you live in areas like mine, it's becoming more and more noticeable every single day, and people are going to have to reckon with this prospect. A lot of areas like this, they haven't had the same waves that a lot of other places have, but they're going to have to the questions, the debates, the ideas, you know, the conflict, all of these different things, you know, not talking about just conflict as in like physical fighting and a lot of the things like you see from like the scenes out in, I don't really know how to pronounce it, Quetta or Chueta, Ceuta, however you say the name, and the old Moroccans came over and stuff like that. Talking about conflict like that, but ideological conflict, as these questions come up more and more and more, it's going to start, you know, dividing friendships, potentially dividing families, all of these things. You're going to see all of these like miniature like civil wars and stuff like that. You know, breaking out just in your social circles and stuff like that. It's inevitable in the way that things are going, and it's all by design. But a lot of the areas around here, you can't help but notice it more and more and more. And yeah, you know, it's the, I don't really know the word that I'm looking for. The uncomfortable realities are going to have to be reckoned with at some point, and it's coming very, very soon. And everyone has a story, right? And everyone has these things where they see these things going on, they see troubling things going on, they don't really know how to go about it, they don't really know how to say about it, don't really know who to say it to, because they don't know who is somebody that they can actually talk to that isn't just going to go and turn into their employer or turn into the, you know, the thought police and stuff like that. It's this collective silencing that's been extremely potent, if you will, at keeping people stowed, at keeping people cowed, at keeping people in line. A lot of times now you see that we're told, and people still frequently say this, which absolutely drives me insane, that we live in a free country. But if people go on the record and talk about these things in a way that is deemed inappropriate or offensive and all of these things, they can very easily have their freedoms taken away from them. And what you're seeing is that pretty much everything in our society nowadays is doing nothing but curtailing the native population, keeping them down, like Orwell's boot perpetually stamping on their face forever, It's keeping them down, all for the benefit of people it's not their home, right? For the people coming in, the new desirable voter base and replacements, essentially. But if people say anything, people object, then obviously they're the problem. That's what we're told. So then you have people then, just good, everyday, hardworking people that see the uncomfortable reality, see the problems it's going to create on the horizon or are creating right now, the troubling instances that are happening right now. And they have to go under anonymity. They can only speak about this truthfully, right? From their, from their perspective, behind the safety of being kept anonymous. We're told that this is a free, tolerant country. It's not so free and tolerant for them, is it? Good hoodie, that is, fair dues. Yeah. I have a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy, and he creates really good things like this, right? So, yeah, what can I say? No good people. But that's what this, project, this work was all about. His most recent video, which I think is what we'll just spend a little bit of time talking about. Because it's regular people that bear the brunt and really suffer from these things, right? Happy Mercy, I'm just going to comment about your hoodie too. All good comments, I hope. All good things, I hope. Right? It's regular people that are going to be the main people that suffer this, right? You see a lot of the, massively pro-open border left-wing politicians, right? They're all pro-refugee and pro-diversity and all of this stuff until they're like, right, well, let's put them in your spare room. Let's put them in your constituency. Then all of a sudden their tune changes, right? It's just going to be regular people, the undesirables, if you will, the afterthoughts in every single scenario, young girls, just regular hardworking people, the taxpayers of this nation that are funding all of this stuff. They're the ones then that are really going to have to bear the burden of a lot of these initiatives. It's not going to be the people actually implementing them. So that means, certainly in my opinion, that these people's voices deserve to be heard and they should be given a way to put those things on the record, to share that story in the hope that it's going to inspire more people to do the same. It's fucking shameful, quite frankly, that you have just regular, everyday working people in this country that cannot say what they really think and cannot just point at the obvious problems either we are A, actively dealing with, or B, will be dealing with in the near future, just as who they are, because they'll be hounded out of a job. They could be attacked. The family could be targeted. All of these things, right? If you live in an area like Cardiff or the big cities like Newport, Swansea, even more of the rural areas that we're seeing more and more and more now, right? As these things, initiatives go from hotels to working their way out into the communities, right? These people that have been systematically brought in as replacements, they work their way out into the communities. You saw recently, or I'm not sure whether you saw, that it was the asylum hotels, right? Asylum hotel usage or asylum hotel the number of asylum seekers housed in hotels has fallen to 16,000, down 50% from last year, and 71% since the peak of 56,000 in September 2023. The Home Office announcing that all remaining asylum hotels will close by 2029. It doesn't mean, right, any people will misconstrue that those people aren't here anymore. No, it's just they're not in the hotels. They're out in our communities. They're either in, maybe in a HMO, or they've been given some housing or whatever. The problem is not gone. It's just been moved, and now it's a lot harder to see. One thing that we learned from Leicester, for example, when we went to Leicester, or one thing I saw up front for the first time ever, was just people in these hotels, and they're just looking at you from the windows and stuff like that. All the while, I've got a concerned mother outside, whom gave me a couple of minutes for an interview very kindly, who is telling me how scared and intimidated she is, and the world that her daughter's going to be growing up in, and that's why she's embarking on this activism. Really admirable, in my opinion, right? It's a very dangerous world we are in and being set up for more and more and more. But yet, obviously, the problem is other people that talk about it. The problem is always the people who see it and then become discordant from this politically correct choir, if you will. You can understand then why people are getting extremely desperate, right? It should never be the case, at least in my opinion. Somebody who's just a regular, Welsh person or British person should have to go anonymous to give their testimony, right? Because they're worried about, how it's going to impact their family or their job or whatever, right? That's an admittance of the problem that we're all talking about. Just have to hope people en masse will realize before it's too late. So I figured we might as well play some of this if you guys hadn't seen it. Reason I called it the New Wales, because this is what we are lining ourselves up for. Obviously, this is the way that it's going. This is going to be the New Wales if nothing is done. I don't know if you can hear that. Apologies if you could hear that. I just want to make sure that it looks okay on the screen. I might have to quickly do a bit of reformatting. Oh dear. Yeah, basically, number one thing is, to everyone who's here and is still engaged with the channel, who's still stuck around despite my my absence, I thank you ever so much. I really do. So here we go. We'll play a little bit of this now. I'll just turn the volume down just a little bit. But if I just transition over a moment, I'm not sure if the audio is going to come through. Someone let me know if you can hear anything. Oh, wait, no, I don't think you can. Hold on. But I'm pretty sure if I go to this, hold on. Let me do this. Because I think I'll play the audio now, but I think it's going to cause my audio to my mic to echo, but we'll see now. Your experience living in Cardiff, growing up, how it is now, and how that's led to you reaching out to me today.
So I was born in Cardiff. I've lived here all my life. My area has been luckily not very multicultural until recently. There's more parts of Cardiff going towards the centre that are very multicultural, but for where I live, it's pretty white on the most part.
Just pause that a moment. Quickly crop back. Can somebody let me know? Was there any echoing or anything like that? Anyone let me know? Just want to make sure that there was no problems with the audio, because OBS has massively changed since I last used it. Are there any issues with the audio? Since I last used it. Are there any issues with the audio? Since I last used it. There we go. I am echoing. Yep. I am echoing. I don't know why. I don't know why it's doing that. It's rather annoying. Oh well. We'll scrap that. That's unfortunate. Oh, all good, no echo. Oh, it must just be echoing on my end then. That's weird. Thank you. Okay, we'll go back to that now then. All right, we'll go back to it now. So this is what I mean for a short video, right? For a short video, it takes a long time just because of the additional processing. So have there been any standout experiences for you at any point that have been really concerning, or things that you have been through, experienced, been told, whatever it may be, whether it be in your youth, whether it be recent? Are there any standout experiences you want to bring forward?
So when I was in college about 7 years ago, I was in quite a multicultural college. There was about 5 or 6 white kids, and the rest were Somalis or Pakistan, whatever. So the one day, my teacher, it was only a small college, my teacher brought me and 5 other white kids into this class, and...
TUI gives you more.
Fucking TUI, fuck off.
More outfit choices with 20
Not right
kilograms.
now.
You know, there was boys and girls in it, and he said, have any of you heard anything about grooming gangs activity that's happening in Cardiff? Have any of you been affected by it? Or do you know anything about it? And that was probably the first time that it was brought to my attention, especially through like a college, which I just wasn't expecting to happen.
So first thing to obviously go over there is that, like we've seen, and I think this is, you know, for you guys, especially if you guys have tuned in at me before, it's going to be quite old news and stuff like that, right? Just because I'm a little bit preoccupied with the audio from what I was hearing before, if it ever does start echoing, please just put it in the chat and I'll try and resolve it. Just if it's not echoing on your guys' end, it must just be on my end. I don't know what's going on. It's obviously a long-standing problem. And, you know, you still have people that will deny, essentially, that these things are going on. You know, when Orwell, as an example, again, talks about denying the evidence of your eyes and ears and stuff like that. And these institutions especially are going to be some of the ones that are going to be massively enforcing the propaganda that we see, you know, the diversity, the multicultural propaganda, right? And, you know, they're indoctrinating the younger individuals of society, you know, to be the noses out of unorthodoxy and so on. You know, even they're noticing it. You know, if it's a case where then they have to bring it up, you know, it's people whom more than most, if we're being uncharitable, let's say, more than most would want this stuff, you know, not getting out, not talking about it, all of these things, right? If it's so much that they are being forced to discuss this with, in this instance, students and so on, then it must be a really bad problem, right? It must be a really bad problem. So that was quite, you know, shocking to kind of learn that, at least for me, because I would be more predisposed to thinking that like educational institutions and stuff like that would wanting this not to get out there, but it seems to be so prevalent that they were in a way maybe forced or whatever to discuss this because of how bad it was. And when you hear about other things, if you haven't watched this video, when you hear about other things that was going on as well in this, you know, multicultural college, you may then understand why, you know, maybe hands were forced or they had to sort of talk about this.
You mentioned there that it was the teachers that brought your group in to talk about this. So indicating that the teachers were at least aware that these things were going on. And you mentioned, just to check, that this was about 6 years ago?
Yeah, something like that, 6 or 7 years ago, yeah.
Do you think there's a good likelihood then that these things could have existed long before that as well, these occurrences of these gangs?
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, they didn't want to name names and ask too many questions, but I think, especially with what's been going on in England, they knew, for example, that it was happening in Wales. And the areas that I was in college, it was in, is quite multicultural, so I think they were presuming stuff was happening around by there as well.
And what was it like being educated in one of these institutions where, speaking to a lot of other people elsewhere in the country, it would be a lot more diverse, if I'm not mistaken, than other educational facilities or institutions. Did that have any notable instances or experiences reminiscing the kinds of things that we see when we're talking about grooming gangs, rape gangs, those kinds of things, sectarianism, racial motivations for things? Do you have any experiences with any kind of that stuff as well?
Yeah, so in college, obviously being one of the only white people there, I had racial abuse thrown at me continuously. Like, white boy, go and do this, white boy, go and do that. I got called kafir a few times because I used to smoke. And there was loads of stuff. I luckily wasn't targeted as bad as other people, but there was one kid in my college who was targeted really bad for it, you know, beaten up, threats, you know, you name it, he had it, like.
What was
Another thing I think is quite important to talk about here, it wasn't discussed directly in this, but obviously when you talk with someone, you know, there's some things which you just come up in conversation and stuff like that, which I think is important to add a little bit of extra context here, because it's additional perspective on how different how we've been conditioned to be is versus like the norm in the rest of the world, and what people respect, what causes you know, either problems to exacerbate or problems to almost be headed off, if you will. I was just talking with this person, and what happened was that he mentioned in this instance that when this was happening, he was not the kind of person and isn't the kind of person that would stand for that. You know, no problem with standing his ground and standing up for himself, right? You know, the classic way we are told about standing up to bullies and so on, right? And that may have played a role in why then he wasn't targeted as bad as this other kid that he mentions at the time, right? I speak to this personal experience as well. You know, I was a kid that didn't stand up for himself, and it made the problems a hell of a lot worse, right? But especially males, right, and young boys, they're conditioned out in the modern day of this way by the feminized school system, especially, of standing up for themselves, of like physical confrontation and stuff like that. When a lot of these other societies that don't really have the focus on these things that the feminized Western societies do nowadays, right? A lot more tribal, a lot more primitive in some ways. Strength is respected. Strength is respected. And if in some ways you're going to be, if you allow yourself to be pushed around, you're going to be pushed around a lot more. Now, you didn't say that that's exactly what happened with this other person, right? So I don't want anybody thinking that that's directly what happened. But it also, again, highlights that we need to stand up for ourselves, and nobody's going to come in and stand up for ourselves. We've relied on the state to stand up for us, and they stabbed us in the back at every turn. And this weakness that we keep fostering, right, through these self-flagellation, struggle sessions and rituals that we put ourselves through on the personal and on the societal level, is only allowing for us to be taken advantage of more and more, right? So this is where you're seeing, until that attitude changes, why wouldn't then we expect more of the same? Sometimes it just comes to us needing then to actually stand our ground. This doesn't necessarily have to be physical, by the way. This can come from a person just not being afraid to be called racist anymore. It's not being afraid of all of these words and terms, right? And I get that that is actually a lot easier said than done, because those terms do potentially, in some instances, carry, the threat of losing your job and all of these things, right? I don't necessarily put too much in, like, if people don't want to associate with you and stuff like that anymore. At the end of the day, you'll find people that will be either in similar situations or will see what's going on for what it is and join you. You'll find people that have your back along the way, right? Even if you don't have them right away, you will find people, for lack of a better term, you will find your tribe, right? But it is quite daunting, but ultimately, unless we start making those changes, why would we, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Why would we expect things to get better for us if we are going to continually project weakness, in this instance, from our governance, right? Because I'm not using this as a way to then try and, blame a lot of regular people for this, just the everyday person, because their governance, their councillor or their MP, their MS, whatever it might be, may not reflect what they want, But you're seeing here now how weakness in our political system, weakness from our leaders, it's just being, other people are looking at us and just being like, oh, we'll take everything we can. We'll take everything we can. And that's why then when you start seeing the crack showed with reform, very quickly, right? How quickly they embraced the establishment, how quickly they cucked to the establishment, as one example, right? When you start seeing those things, when you start seeing, them using the same words, kind of repeating the same kind of arguments, touting and towing the same line, right? It really does matter. Really does matter when you see those things happening, right? And a lot of things right now, won't go into too much about it. It'll be beyond the scope of this stream, I think, just coming back, baby steps. There's a lot of dissatisfaction, especially recently, with a lot of the things some of the restore representatives are saying. So there's that to, think about as well. It's you can understand, in some ways why people lose hope. I don't think you can. I don't think we're in a position right now where we can lose hope. I still think that it's worth pursuing the political at this present moment in time. I'm not subscribing to the idea yet that there is no political solution, but it is getting dire, and you can understand then why people lose hope. But ultimately, the point I was making in this long fucking diatribe, right, in this long-winded kind of round the mulberry bush kind of thing, is that whilst we continually, as a country, whilst we project weakness, and ultimately this is down to our elected representatives, right? Which is why the things that they're saying, it's very easy to put it across, the things that they're saying, or public statements, they don't all matter all that much. It does. Because these are the fruits that we get from it. If we continually project weakness, we're going to get really, really bad fruits. It's not going to be the political leadership that deal with it. It's going to be the regular person.
What's the educational institutions, the school or the college's response to this, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't think they knew. I don't think anyone mentioned it, and if they did, they didn't do anything about it.
Oh, so it was the case then that if they did know something about it, nothing was done, but it could be the case that they actually didn't know that it was going on.
Yeah, so I'm not 100%. I'm not sure if they knew about it, but if they did, they didn't exactly do anything to stop it.
I'm dreaming of a cinema that focuses on a Spanish classic film.
So I think that's quite important to highlight as well, because, you know, it can be very easy to jump on and instantly assume, and you can understand again why people jump to conclusions and all of these things, especially on matters like this where it was covered up for so long. People were trying to say these things and trying to get the truth out there for so long. You can't fault people in some ways for jumping to conclusions, right? You know, it could just be the case again, as we're saying here, to be as, you know, maybe as charitable as we can in this instance. Now that, you know, they know what was going on, I don't really, you know, I don't really know. Would it be a case of people, you know, eyes wide shut kind of thing, I guess, you know, kind of like a see no evil, hear no evil, that kind of thing. But I don't know. So there's no allegations being made or anything like that. I want to stress that. No allegations being made or anything like that. This is where we're getting now into more of the modern day. So you see now that this is, you know, it's highlighting several things here, you know, concerning things with regarding, you know, immigrant youth, and those kinds of things. What happens then when there is a majority? And this is, again, nothing new, really. This is an example of something that's very, very close to home. If you live in Wales, this is your capital. This is your capital city, right? So in this now should be ringing alarm bells when you see then that currently, I think it's in England, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody's watching and I get this slightly wrong, they can drop a fact check in the chat or whatever it is, that currently it's about 1 in 4 schools, either in England or in Britain, where white children are already a minority. I think it's 1 in 4, right? Think of how many more of these stories you're inevitably going to get, right? That is the way, whether that makes you uncomfortable or not, right? Especially if it does, right? That sentiment, if you're, you know, your instant reaction there was to think that, oh, it's just being, insert whatever term, racist, all this and that, right? That's going to be your knee-jerk response. The message is more, you know, even for you, because I don't think you would realize the real danger that's coming. And obviously it's not you that will be in the school growing up as a foreigner in your own local primary school or your local comprehensive school, right? That's the uncomfortable reality we have to reckon with. How many more of these stories do you want?
Have you noticed anything troubling, just walking around your community and stuff like that, troubling instances, or, you know, any other kinds of, you know, stories you've been told, accounts that you've been told?
So there was this girl I knew when I was about 18 or 19, and so on Newport Road there is a load of hostels. Now one of the hostels is called it's a girls' hostel. I think it's for maybe 16 years and upwards, and obviously these are like troubled women, maybe homeless, maybe drug users. And what I got told was there was a restaurant on City Road, right at the end of City Road by the Weatherspoons, that they all used to work in. Now that was
I just want to stress as well, the B-roll footage, this is not B-roll footage that is meant to imply that necessarily this is where the actual place was that we're talking about or anything like that. Now, this, if I'm not mistaken, from when we were there, more about this will be coming out in the future. This is on City Road, But you know, I don't want people getting it conflated that if you recognize this area, that this is exactly where it is that we're talking about. No, this is just, you know, footage that we spliced in over the top, you know, trying to keep people engaged and stuff like that. But I don't want people thinking that, oh my God, I know where that is, and then trying to link it to a business and go in harassing that business or anything like that. Don't do that. Please don't do that whatsoever.
Almost like advertisement. They would go there, obviously dressed smart, and City Road is predominantly foreign. Like there's not many white people there. So this restaurant was a hotspot for Asian men to go to. And obviously these girls would be wearing like smart clothes to do waitressing. So then there was another place, what's the road called? It's in Adamstown, Clifton Street. So on Clifton Street there is a barber shop. Now I've seen this myself. These girls, I saw about 7 girls, and they were from about 16 to maybe about 25, all dolled up, you know, wearing makeup, nice clothes, not so much like dresses and stuff, but you know, made an effort. They would go to this barber shop about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and the shutters would be down, so you'd see a lad open the shutters, the girls would walk in, they'd walk right to the back of the barber shop, and that's where the flat was. Obviously then the guy would shut the barber shop. Now this barber shop opened about 10 o'clock in the morning, so why would these girls go into this barber shop so early in the morning to head straight towards a flat? They weren't going to be having haircuts there because obviously it was a men's barber shop.
So again, these things, right? And I would imagine, depending on where you guys are located, if you live in, you know, a lot of areas that have had a lot of influx of the people that we're talking about. History Reset was Kieran. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you as always. You have, you know, senses, regardless of the ontology or the epistemology you think of how we have them. You have an instinct, you have a gut instinct or an intuition, whatever it might be, isn't always 100% accurate. But a lot of the times then when you see something happening and it's, you know, ambiguous, it doesn't really make sense. A lot of times you don't feel that way for no reason at all. You don't feel that way for no reason at all. That's why when we get a little bit later on into this, when we start elaborating on this a little bit, we have now, you know, the stories and testimonies in the rape gang report, for example, from Restore Britain. We have a lot of these things now. We're quite comprehensively, we can point to these things when you're recognizing patterns, when you're recognizing things that just make you uncomfortable. You know, in the pit of your stomach, you get that feeling, you know, something's not right. How, you know, it makes you think how many others would have seen this. But again, you go to this, people either tell you you're just being paranoid or, you know, again, all of the classic terms and labels that have been used to stamp this very thought out. How many times now have we seen that could very well be vindicated, right? You don't, something that sticks out like that, sticks out, it makes uncomfortable, something that you notice and gives you that feeling in the pit of your stomach. A lot of times that's not nothing. So it makes me wonder in this instance, that makes me think, you know, how many others have noticed this? How many others have just, maybe they walking the dog in the morning and they see this and they just think, what the hell's going on there? It's a bit weird. You know? Like I said, there's a lot of things about it that don't make sense. They're waiting outside a men's barbershop at a time where it's not open, and it's just a quick shutters open, shutters down, and they're all, you know, dressed a certain way. There's many ways this could, you know, be going. There's, you know, for not really a smoking gun, I suppose. But I would imagine that if a lot of you saw that, maybe saw it repeatedly, especially said some of them there he would estimate as being as young as, say, 16, right? Is it not very troubling? Is it not, you know, very concerning? I would think it is, especially with some of the, again, things which I bring up later on.
What do you think was going on? What kind of either suggestions or what things might then jump out at you as to what might be going on behind those shutter doors when you see those things going on?
Well, with obviously all the stuff that's happened all over England and, you know, the many rape gangs that have happened all across Britain, you can just presume. Like I said, why would they be going to a barbershop that's so early in the morning when the place wasn't even open?
Again, I would imagine all of you would have seen this, but this is actually a screenshot from the report. Rape gangs operate/have operated in at least 149 local authority districts across the United Kingdom. There are several in Wales that were identified. I can't remember them exactly off the top. This was Monmouthshire. And then this one is Pembrokeshire. And I believe it's not all of Swansea. I don't think it's Swansea East. But there's been other newspaper articles that I've referenced on the podcast in the past that have talked about the gangs operating in Cardiff and other areas like that, Newport and stuff like that. You know, you don't usually need to go and search very far to find them. So again, when you see these things, again, one of the, in my opinion, at the very least, logical inference would be, you know, you read about Oldham, you read about Luton, you read about Rochdale, Rotherham, Telford, all of these cases where you have the overwhelming magnitude of numbers and the atrocities. Then you get the testimonies from individuals, Fiona Goddard, you know, all of the people that put their names forward, you know, and put their stories into the rape gang report, right? There's many others that are out there, you know. Sammy, I've forgotten her surname, not with it, all the best tonight. But, you know, loads of these people, right, that have then their stories, and then you think, well, hang on. The outlook on a lot of our politicians is the same. A lot of the initiatives and schemes that are being put through the school system, that are being enforced through people's work, all of these things are all the same. The trajectories may not be in all areas going at exactly the same rate. So it hit the cities first and some of the towns in England, then it's going to start filtering out into more of the rural areas, like I said, maybe then the cities in Wales and so on. Cities first and then it goes out. But all these same things that are going on, the same groundwork is being laid. Again, we talked about it earlier, that the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Why would we lay the groundwork for all of the same things and expect the result to be different, right? It's just like we've set up the dominoes in the same way, right, that they already have done in these areas. Why would we expect, you know, them to fall differently in this instance? So that's what you're seeing, even though a lot of the areas in Wales seem, even in this report, which is our most recent sort of up-to-date evidence, if you will, or at least a collation of these things, maybe the things in there that just haven't been uncovered yet, or is again, in some of these areas, hasn't happened yet. But you'll notice there that Rhyl is absent. Rhyl in North Wales is absent. But they did actually have an instance of an organized gang up there. I believe they were prosecuted recently. Right, there was 4 of them. There was 4 perpetrators in that gang. I believe they recently, I think their story came up recently in the news because I think they had been prosecuted, if I'm not mistaken. But I could have that slightly wrong. Double check that. Why would we not be spending when it's happening in Rill, which is like a average, like about like 93 or 95% white area, and you've got instances of these things? Why would a logical inference, a question, be, well, hang on, it could be happening in any single one of these areas? And then the solution remains the same.
Why would they be going to the barber shop so early in the morning when the place wasn't even open?
Oh, God. More ads. AI-generated ads, as if ads could only get, like, more soulless.
I think that might have been one of the places where either direct abuse was taking place, or do you think that if there were not direct abuse taking place, that this could maybe be like a hub to where these girls were sent out on other things? We know that some of the other factors that are conjoined in with all of this mess are things like drugs and alcohol and all of.
I'm just going to pause there so we can read them a moment. So these are all screenshots from the inquiry as well. When the restaurant closed, he took me to the tables where the tables were stored. You know what happened next. Immediately afterwards, all the restaurant workers entered the area. Certain member held me down while they each did what they did, laughing during it. Later in the car, he insulted me, called me derogatory names, blaming me for what he had forced me into. Already there, you're seeing restaurants have been used for these things. Then you see other things like taxis and all of these other services, right? You see an instance of this, then somebody's telling me a story of where you have the barbershop, and then there was the restaurant example from before. Again, it just gets you asking questions, gets you really just wondering, are there really bad things going on right now? Right? Could this be another example? There's a lot of the same or similar red flags here. They were gang nights, so there were larger groups of people involved in trafficking and abuse. They basically had a party, taking drugs, drinking, and doing what they do. So you're seeing here a lot of these things. Is how they keep a lot of the victims hooked as well, with drugs and with alcohol, and sometimes just with the grooming process and with affection. Right, and you have some of these girls who are from broken homes and stuff like that. Again, it's why it's important when you think of how the societal push ideologies like feminism have really declared war on the family. When it breaks that up, you see how much easier it makes it for these perpetrators to get in and worm their way in vulnerable children just by showing them the little bit of affection. Say, oh, I'm your boyfriend now, and you know, whatever else it might be. Then again, you know, cigarettes, drugs, alcohol, all of this kind of stuff. And obviously then you've got the police involved as well. They're being given money and sexual favors in return for silence and making things go away.
Those kinds of things. Do you think that if there was no direct abuse even being...
So this is just another example to explain again the scale of why we should really be worried about this, right? Hundreds and hundreds of people that abused you. Saying it's about 98% of them were Pakistani Muslim, not they were Iraqi or Kurdish. They didn't want to open that can of worms because it's a religion thing. I was beaten regularly, drugged, filmed, footage was distributed, broken bones, facial injuries, severe trauma. You know about the instances like the Jack Daniels bottle, I think it was, and all of these, you know, the pumps that they would use. You know, you can read about Mohammed Kara, I believe his name is. That, you know, they used the pumps to. You don't need me to go into the grim details of it. No, obviously the algorithm and the you know, the stream won't look too friendly on that if I do that. Subjected to racial abuse in the community and blamed by families of perpetrators. Again, harkens back just to what we were talking about with the racial abuse at the start. You know, a lot of people, they seemingly, you know, a lot of our people, they don't see a problem with this because we've been so conditioned to there can essentially be nothing that you can do to white people in the name of, you know, racial justice, racial equity, social justice, all of these things, right? There's nothing that you can do that outweighs their inherent evil, you know, often stemming from myths about history, right? Just a complete retelling and reshaping of history. That's why when you see innocuous things like people being cast in roles about history that they shouldn't be, it really doesn't matter, because it is rewriting history to suit a completely fallacious political narrative and agenda
taking place there, that it could have potentially then been like a hub for one of these other things?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't want to say if it is where sexual activity is happening or anything, because I fully don't know, but you can just assume, can't you?
From what you understand of the area of Cardiff in general then?
One thing I would just say to that is you have to obviously be careful with assumptions. But if you have that feeling, just not outright jumping to conclusions, but keeping that in the back of your mind and, you know, not, you know, outright dismissing it because of PC programming, at least keeping that, you know, awareness. You know, the last thing you want then as well is to jump to a conclusion, is to jump to say it a bit prematurely and you get it wrong. That's one of the last things that you want as well. You always want to make sure that the truth comes out. But again, the reason why you have a lot of people jumping to conclusions on a lot of these things as well is because of how much it's been covered up, because of how many things have been lied about it, right? 'Cause how many generations that this has been covered up for. Talking going back to the 50s here in England with all this stuff. You know, you only got to look at other crimes as well that go back further than that, right? Such as the, you know, the Remigration Now or Patriotic Alternatives in Memoriam, right? The in memoriam sections on their websites, you know? On the Remigration Now one as an example, which I know the Lotus Eaters talked about recently, you've got cases on there, I believe, in Wales going back to like the early 1900s. There was a lady that I believe was murdered about 2 weeks or 11 days, something like that, after she got married to an immigrant, I believe, of Jamaican background. They had an argument, and I think he slit her throat, if I'm not mistaken. At the end of the stream, I might pull that one up, because someone sent it to me. I'll see if I can pull it up a little bit later. But that was in like 1900 or like 1905 or 1907, something like that. You've got then cases around the time of like 1919 and the Barry race riots and stuff like that. A lot of these crimes, they go back far, far further than even the crimes of the rape gangs, which go back to like the 50s. It's only gotten, you know, over that period of time, what's that, about 110, 120 years, it's only gotten worse and worse and worse until now we have the problems that we're dealing with now. Again, that snowball effect. This is why it's so difficult. That's why it's such a heightened political issue, because you had Windrush and Boris Wave and all of these things, right? Tony Blair opening the floodgates. Whereas before, we could have dealt with it when it was extremely small, and it would have been extremely easy. The reason why it's so difficult and so divisive and so hard for us to deal with nowadays is because we're not just dealing with a tiny little snowball, right? We're dealing with this, you know, Goliath, you know, massive fucking snowball, which is barreling down the hill at terminal velocity, you know, to use that metaphor. So if only the problems could have been solved when they were small. Sadly, previous generations, you know, they were indoctrinated into the same propaganda that we're dealing with now. We're just dealing with, you know, ludicrous levels of it, you know. So ultimately, the solution remains the same, you know.
And residing there, what is the general consensus that you know of, in your opinion, or general public perception of these things, do you feel that you're kind of an outlier viewing these things and looking at them in this way and seeing these troubling patterns? Or do you think that there's a lot of people in Cardiff that see it, and as a result then it could be indicating that this actually is a really prevalent problem in these areas?
I think people know, whether or not they're aware of it or whether or not they actually want to do anything or care about it enough.
Like, this is a prime example of how bad the cities are as well. And I speak to, people who've been involved in political activism for, decades and decades now, and they speak about how bad the cities are. This is a mural, if you're not, looking on screen right now. It says, "I am a refugee." And it says, son, a daughter, brother, a sister, cousin, grandchild, so on, nurse, caregiver, volunteer, student, teacher, a lot of occupations here, whatever it might be that a lot of British people, Welsh people in Wales's instance could do. Runner, athlete, dream chaser, voice, and so much more. Imagine being reduced to just one label. Look at this now when this message down here.
There's another story.
I'm Welsh, homeless and sanctioned. No money, where's the help? Look after our own so we can help others. There's a homeless person here, seemingly. Obviously, maybe we'll play a second of devil's advocate, say anybody could have written this, but, I don't think there's going to be a lefty, for example, that's going to deface their own mural in a way that they couldn't immediately get it off after it was kind of a photo op, whatever it might be, to try and blame on the far right or whatever it might be. This person here has written here that they're Welsh, homeless, and sanctioned for it. And as you see now that's getting to the point where we're getting so many of these people. You had like the tents and all of this kind of stuff, the tent communities that were popping up in like Ireland and France and all of these places. It wasn't for their own people that, if I'm not mistaken, somebody again correct me in the chat or correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, that they recently decriminalized sleeping rough. If I'm not mistaken, they recently decriminalized sleeping rough. They didn't do it at the time, seemingly, that this message was left, to be charitable to the person who wrote this message, one of our own people who could have fallen on bad times, made some bad decisions in life that led them to where they are, whatever the reason might be. But they're right in saying that they got no help. They get no help. They didn't get the 4-star hotel treatment. It was like, I think there was a guy that was a military veteran, and he was very nearly dying of a staph infection. This was somewhere in England, just because he was homeless in the middle of his high street. And the amount of times he'd gone to the pertinent or the relevant authority to try and help, they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything for him. And he was nearly dying with a staph infection, if I'm not mistaken. I've covered the video on the podcast back in the past. It's from a fair while ago. The government always says, whether it's black hole, where they got no money, they need more money for this, they need more money for that. They have more of the public's money, if I'm not mistaken, than they, at least in recent memory, ever have. Bear me a moment. It seems that there is almost like no way of holding on to your own money nowadays, right? There's some cause, some levy, some tax that's being introduced, whether it's in pursuit of net zero, whether again it's all the money that was spaffed on the hotels and is now being spaffed on social housing, sometimes to the tunes of millions, for say Somalis with 8-9 kids or whatever, and their multi-million pound house that they've been given by the state is not good enough, right? Meanwhile here, our own people who may just desperately need help don't even get a look in. Yet it's many people will tell you it's the people who reckon with the uncomfortable reality that the government has decided that everyone in the world matters except for their own people, and that this is being done deliberately on racial and ethnic grounds, right? That it's the people observing that and calling it out that are the problem, and trying to make people confront the uncomfortable reality that are the problem, because they want to help people like this. Oh, there we go.
But 100% people know it's not just me who's seen it, it's many people.
Is there anything else you'd like to add that you'd like to make both either myself or the viewers watching this aware of in these final remarks?
If you know anything, you must come forward. This is the only way this is going to end.
That's absolutely true. So that's why if you, I don't know if anybody watching this or whatever, it doesn't necessarily have to be you, but anybody out there who wants to get what they know, wants to get us out there, there's your contact. There's your contact. You can do it completely anonymously. That's the whole thing with this video in particular, this project in particular, was to, okay, my dog nearly destroyed my setup. Stop, please. Not you guys. It's to get people to, the more and more, you know, we can have the snowball now rolling in the opposite direction. More and more people coming forward, sharing this. And like I said at the start of this, it's not going to be the politician. It's not going to be the big celebrity. It's not going to be any of these people that really deal with the big consequences of this. It's just going to be regular people. So you should be hearing from regular people. And it's just a shame, massive shame, and a massive indictment on our society that they need to go under. They need to go under anonymization to do it. There's one last bit at the end of this video, though, which will give you a hint of some of the things, hopefully, to come in the future. Tips at voiceofthevalleys.co.uk.
Would you be willing to show me around some of these areas so that we can maybe see this for ourselves on the ground and really start hopefully getting a lot of light on these things? If they are going on, everybody really does need to know about it.
Yeah, 100%.
You feel almost foreign in your own country. Like this
Yeah.
could be somewhere in Turkey.
Yeah.
It's literally called the Ottomans. These are just like perfectly talking about it as we were walking down the street.
Do you see that sign there saying Ambassador, the black one?
No.
On the right.
Oh, yeah.
That is actually a black one.
All right, okay. Is that the kind of gas that I'm thinking of?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the ones they stick in the balloons.
The happy gas?
Yeah.
The Joker toxin?
This was just as someone had accosted us outside a shop as we were walking past, asking about, where I get the gas for this or whatever. So, Cardiff, I think I saw somebody comment on this video on YouTube. One of the best things they did was move out of Cardiff. Walking through some of these areas, you can absolutely understand why.
It looks like they're going to be turning this into a cultural centre.
Probably an Islamic one.
Yeah, it is. This application has been made to the County of Cardiff to carry out the above development into Shah Jalal Islamic Cultural Centre, Grace Road, Cardiff. I'm assuming that's this building.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. Once you start to take over this, empty then.
So there you go. Tips at voiceofthevalleys.co.uk. If you or anybody else has anything to share. Yeah, close that. So like I said, the hiatus that I've been on hasn't been voluntary, so to speak, and also hasn't been without fruit, so to speak, either. Have tried to keep on top of some projects that we've been working on. It's just been extremely difficult when it comes to being as busy as I was, but thankfully not going to be quite as busy, going forward, because there are going to be some things which I want to do. A couple of videos I want to make from the footage that we've got from Leicester, footage that we've got from where else did we go? This is from a little while ago, but I'll turn them into some commentaries because I think I have some valuable things that I'll want to add to them, even though the footage is from a little while ago. Some of the clips or whatever you might be able to find on X if you follow me on X. A couple of things I do want to go over before I tune out for the night as well. We went to Leicester Crew. We went to the Crew demo, the Arapol demo. There's some good things to talk about from that, so I'll put these in their own videos as well. I've also done a project, obviously, a couple of months ago with Public Child Protection Wales. We might talk about some things to do with that as well. Obviously, great guys over at Public Child Protection Wales doing extremely good work. They're trying to protect kids through the school system, particularly with regards to like the gender ideology, the grooming ideology that is. So we got some things coming up in the future. It's just taken me a while to get them edited and get them produced. I'm going to be working on them over the weekend now, but I wanted to come back, keep you guys posted on some of the things that we've been up to that I am still here, not going anywhere. The fight for Wales, the fight for Britain, the fight for Europe, the fight for the West continues and will always continue. One other thing that I wanted to share a bit quick, if you just bear with, because there is a extremely important podcast happening next week. Let me see if I can find it. I don't know if he's posted it. Has he posted it? Oh, I don't know if he has. I don't think he has. I can't find it. Give me 2 seconds, ladies and gentlemen. Keep it rolling a minute. It's very important that I find this. I put it up in my Telegram channel. If you're not part of my Telegram channel, by the way, you can find my Telegram channel in the description. Here we go. So, a true giant in the field of nationalism in Wales is on a podcast next week. I'll just bring this up. And that is Mr. Joe Marsh. As you know, I've sat down with Joe for the podcast last year and had a great conversation. And he'll be going on the Right Side podcast, as you can see here. I believe it's next week. So Joe is a true giant in the field of nationalism in Wales. Long-standing, real patriot in that regard. Not one of the fake globalist Plaid Cymru nationalists, right? Not one of those. And I think it'll be a really good conversation. We had a good conversation when I first reached out to him for my show. He got wealth of stories, wealth of knowledge, wealth of experience. So make sure you stay tuned for that. They've also recently sat down with Sam Melia. As you know, I sat down with Sam Melia a good couple of months ago as well. We had a great conversation about his time in prison, activism, all of those kinds of things. So make sure you tune into that. And there was one other thing I wanted to showcase as well, which you guys can stay tuned with. If there was going to be anything that ever happened with YouTube or any of the other medias or anything like that, what's the bet? It's not going to load now. Let me try this. Oh. It's decided it doesn't want to load. Unless there's some issues going on with it on the back end, I might have to talk to one of my guys about this. For some reason, it's not coming up at the moment. We have a new website. We have a new website that for some reason, at least on my computer browser, is not working. Let me see if it'll come up on my phone. Okay, it's coming up on my... oh, no. Okay, something's up with the site at the moment, guys. I'll have to showcase that another time. The site is not working, which is a massive shame. I was going to showcase that. Looks like I'm not showcasing it anymore. But yeah, that's just a little bit about where I've been. Some things that are coming up going forward. So there'll be some important stuff just to talk about commentary-wise from Leicester crew and some of the other things as well. I think there may be some interesting events coming up in the future. We will be trying to get the podcast up and running again with regards to guests and stuff like that. It's just been extremely busy. When my work arrangements changed, it actually messed with one of the interviews that I had planned. Another one, I was going to travel for a demonstration. Would have been a really, really good one if I was able to do it, but sadly, logistically, it would not end up being possible. So stay tuned. We're not going anywhere in the fight. And thank you very much for watching, listening, for tuning in. Thank you very much for people who've left comments in the chat. Greatly appreciate it. And yeah, thank you all so much. Going to keep this stream fairly short. We're already at 1 hour 25. That's not too bad. So yeah, stay tuned, guys. I'm going to try and go find out why the website is down. And I will get back to you guys as soon as possible. I have several missed calls now that seems quite important that I must go and attend to. So have a fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, good night, guys, wherever you are. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much for watching. Hwyl fawr. I'll see you next time. And you take care now. Godspeed.